Morning, everybody. Firstly, I would like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we gather and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to the City Governance Committee this morning on the 16th of November 2022. I declare this meeting open at 10:28 and would like to advise attendees in the room that this meeting is being webcast and audio recorded. We're going to move on to attendance and leave of absence. I have received a leave of absence from Councillor Bannon, Division 9, and Councillor Lane, Division 2. Could I please ask for a mover of this motion? Councillor Hall has moved that motion. Can I have a seconder to that motion? Thank you, Councillor Karansky. I'm having a bit of a mind blank here and going a bit slow there. Do any councillors wish to speak to that motion? None. I now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, could you please raise your hand? That has been carried. Thank you very much, councillors. We're just catching up here. Sorry, I'm moving a little bit too fast. We'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, declarations of conflict of interest. I don't have any noted. Do any councillors have a conflict of interest at all? There being none, I now refer to the reports on today's agenda, and I'll just wait for the girls to catch up a little bit. Good. Thank you. Well, today's agenda is a large one, and I'm sorry, councillors, for keeping you here for a long time, but we'll try to move through them as quickly as possible. So the first one is item 5.1, the quarterly review of the operational plan for 2022-2023. I would like to now ask the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Darren Scott, to enter discussions, but I do believe he's going to pass that over straight away to Ms. Kay Sullivan, who is the champion in this area. Ms. Kay, would you like to proceed?
Thanks very much, Madam Chair, and good morning, councillors. Item 5.1 refers to quarter 1 of the operational plan report. This function now sits under the PMO, which is why I'm sitting here presenting it. I'll take the report as read, but just wanted to highlight the following information. There's 75 projects within the operational plan, and I'm really pleased to report that based on our health check, 96% of those projects are completed and on track, and that's an improvement from quarter 1 in 2021-22 as well. We've had 2 projects completed, 70 on track, and 3 are in the monitor phase. With regard to requests for changes in the operational plan, as part of the recommendations of this report, the 3 projects that are listed there, they're administrative changes based on reporting line changes. Under the performance results rated as monitor, we have 3 projects there, Rosier Park, and I'll just remind councillors that this is in the previous quarter based on the October report which went to Community Lifestyle Committee. The results and the reporting of that will look different for the next quarter. The Customer Service Charter and Standards update. The update with regard to that is that based on the amount of organisational change and our restructure that's occurring across the organisation, I've spoken with that area about making this project transitional for a period of time to cover those changes that are occurring. And then the last one is the enhancement to city admin, the main entry there, and that will be back on track in the next quarter. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Kay. Councillors, does anybody have any questions? Because I have nobody noted down at this stage, Ms. Kay. Wow, we're moving through the agenda items quite quickly. Thank you. Ladies, we should have a motion displayed on the screen behind me. Councillor, is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Fraser has moved the motion. Councillor Bradley, are you happy to second? Thank you very much. Councillors, I'll now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been unanimous. Thank you very much. That has been carried. Thank you. We now move on to item 5.2. Ms. Kay, I believe you are the one that is entering discussions. I note that 5.2 is a confidential report and it is considered necessary to take the discussions of this report into a closed session. This matter relates to the Local Government Regulations 2012, Queensland, Section 254J. It's just the attachment, I'm told, and it relates to negotiations regarding a commercial matter involving local government for which the public discussion would be likely to prejudice the interest of local government. Does anybody wish to take us into confidential? There's no need to move into confidential, no movers, so we'll continue. Ms. Sullivan, would you like to talk to the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 5.2 relates to the Q1 Digital Transformation Program update. As part of setting up digital transformation and moving that program to sitting under the PMO will be providing quarterly reports on how the digital transformation program is progressing. Could I just take this opportunity? I'd like to introduce Rod Bartlett, who's sitting beside me. Rod has been appointed as the Program Manager for Digital Transformation, and given that IT is not my subject matter expertise, he is here to provide any technical updates and answer any questions that you may have. The intent of the digital transformation update is to report at a program level on how our DT projects are progressing. And you will see as part of this report, we talk about our program highlights, our program costs, risks, and any upcoming milestones that we have. I am happy to take the report as read and answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. I have no councillors who want to ask a question at this stage. I'll just put it back to the floor. Any questions, councillors? Wow, you're getting off lightly today, Ms. Sullivan. Councillors, we have a motion on the screen right now. Do I have anybody to move the motion that's currently on the screen? Councillor Bradley has moved the report. Is there a seconder? Councillor Raven has seconded. Could I, by a show of hands, get support from the council, please? That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors. Does anybody have any general business for the Portfolio Manager's Office, Ms. Kay Sullivan, today? None? Ms. Kay, do you have any for us?
Nothing today, thank you.
Thank you. You may go. And can I just say that the Mr. Darren Scott looked wonderful in his Start a Conversation t-shirt today. I just wanted to note that if you're out there, it's not weak to speak, just talk to somebody. Thank you. Well, just give us a moment and we'll get into the next item. Councillors, we'll move on now to item 5.3, the Apprentice and Trainee Direct Hire Pilot Update. Could Mr. Jeff Watson please enter the discussions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the Chair, good morning, councillors. Today I will provide an update on the Apprentice and Trainee Direct Hire Pilot. Earlier this year, and following the Executive Leadership Team and Council endorsement, the People and Culture Branch commenced a pilot program exploring the viability of council directly hiring apprentices and trainees. This pilot was initiated to assess the possible alternative to our traditional hosted hire model using external group training organisations to deliver recruitment and management services for our trainees and apprentices. The report presented today provides a detailed comparison between a direct hire and a hosted hire trainee and apprentice. We are pleased to note that at this stage of the pilot there have been a number of benefits realised for our direct hire cohort, including increasing levels of engagement and belonging, increased financial subsidies that are available to council, that these funding sources are not guaranteed in the future, a consistent level of employment conditions to other council staff, and a single point of contact and a level of communication to their supervisor which has improved. There are other considerations and learnings that have emerged for council, including increased life cycle costs associated with the pilot, including resource administration and employment costs, reduced awards night sponsorship from our external stakeholders, an increased employment-related risk profile to council, and the need to consider language, literature and numeracy based tests in the future. We are seeking the report to be noted. This is a 6-monthly update to the 12-month pilot program, and a further update considering the future direction of the trainee and apprentice model in terms of an assessment of financial and resource impacts as detailed in the report of the Director, Organisational Services, dated 16th November 2022, be provided in 6 months. I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Do any councillors have any questions? Councillor Wilcox.
Thanks. Thank you for bringing this to us. I'm just wondering, why is there such a difference between the life cycle of the business trainee and the life cycle of the heavy vehicle commercial one? When I was reading that on page 3 of the report, trying to understand the difference between the costing, because it's 101 versus 8%. So that one I just found a little bit hard to understand.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. There is a 12-month traineeship, so this is over a 12-month provision for the trainees, whereas the apprentice is a 4-year certification. So it's different with regards to 12 months to 4 years.
So is it just the costing because it's spread out over the 4 years as opposed to the 12 months? Is that why?
Yes, there's 2 different comparators there. So trainees, there are different pay rates associated with trainees versus direct hire, and different conditions of employment with apprentices compared to direct hire and hosted hire models.
I just found it really hard to understand with 101 cost increase versus 8%. That because I totally get trainees are 12 months, apprentices are 4. I totally understand all of the programs. I don't understand. Is it 101% of the cost? Is that borne by council? Is that borne by? I'm just confused.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. In terms of numbers, $8,000 compared to $16,000 is the difference for the trainees. So that's a 101% difference based on the numbers and the direct hire and the hosted hire for the trainee over the 12-month period. Whereas the life cycle of a heavy vehicle mechanic, 158,000 for a hosted hire compared to 171 for the direct hire. I'm happy to take the question offline and work through those numbers in the attachment.
That's all right. That I sort of understand it a bit more now. So another question. So demand for apprentice and trainee placements across council is strong. Table 2 shows requests for placements over the past 4 years. Who are the requests from? Are they direct from students? Are they direct from families? Are they direct from the schools? How are they coming in?
The requests are coming through from our businesses, the branches across council. So requests for trainees and apprentices to be included in their daily workings or daily business lives. So.
Okay, so the branches themselves. All right, gotcha. Now, the only thing I'm really concerned about on page 5 is council not able to offer apprentices, trainees, ongoing roles unless there is a relevant available vacant positions approved through a service enhancement. The whole idea of traineeship and apprenticeships is that the business continues with them once they've finished. It's not to train them up and turf them out and say, on your bike, go and find somewhere else. The whole idea of these positions is the business actually needs to keep them on once they've finished. So that's my concern. If there's no service enhancement coming through beforehand, why are we taking on these positions? I love these programs, don't get me wrong, but that's the nuts and bolts of why these positions were created in the first place, and this is why you're supposed to actually get part of the funding, because the positions continue once they've finished their certifications.
Jeff, I'll let you continue, but Mr. Stratton would also like to pipe in on this conversation as well. Is that okay, Ms. Wilcox? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the ongoing employment of trainees and apprentices is reliant on vacancies through council service establishments. So that would be up to the individual branches to put those forward to council to seek those positions and vacancies for ongoing employment.
Do they consider that before they're actually asking for the position to be filled by a trainee and apprentice, though?
I think you'd have to go to the branches for that. I wouldn't be able to speak on their behalf.
Robert's going to enter the discussion.
So, sorry, through the chair. So it's a good point, Councillor Wilcox. A lot of the time with the hosted hire arrangement, we try and put more apprentices through the trades. So we generally put more apprentices through than positions we actually have available through the hosted hire arrangement. What we do is when they finish their time, their trade, we do try and keep them on for an extra period of time to give them some experience within council as a tradesperson, which makes it easier for them to get employment in other organisations. It's simply the case at the moment that we don't have the number of vacancies to provide all apprentices and trainees with permanent employment. We'd love to, but part of this exercise is actually to train up people, whether they be trainees or apprentices, to get their trades so they can go and gain employment, whether that be with council or with another employer, preferably within Logan City.
I think I like the hybrid model, especially if there's no service enhancement beforehand, and if they go through a hosted hire model, that's great, because then the host takes that the GTO takes that responsibility for once they finish and that sort of thing. But I think a hybrid model for me would be great, and that sort of thing. But talking at the trainee and apprenticeships awards just recently, you know, the young ones that are coming through, they're our champions for these. And being up there on stage and saying that council has a 96% success rate for completion as opposed to 56%, which is the national average, which is fantastic. But I still think if we don't know before we're going to hire them, if there's no position at the end of their traineeship or apprenticeship, then go through the hosted model. If we know that it comes up in a service enhancement that yes, you're going to continue on once you've finished, and that sort of thing, then yes, do the direct hire, because I think that's a benefit to us because we can keep them on.
Councillor Wilcox, just noting that this is just an update, a 6-monthly update of the actual program. Thank you for your questions. Councillor Heremiah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank the council officers for their work on this. This is really exciting, and as a member of the youth community, I can say that these sort of programs really change people's lives. You know, once upon a time, the goal of a career was to be in one company for 50 years and then you retire and they give you a gold watch. But young people see employment in a different way, and I think this is an awesome opportunity for people to come to council, learn. I can't wait to see in 20 years when we can see people who were a part of this program. They learnt at council, they worked at council. Now, 20 years later, they're running their own local business in Logan, being their own boss. So I think that this work is invaluable, and I'd like to thank the council officers, because even though it's just a piece of paper, it does result in real changes in people's lives, and that's what we need in our city. So thank you for your work on this.
Thank you, Councillor Heremiah. I tend to agree with you. Is there any further? Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. I know the 100% cost difference looks pretty scary as a number on its own, but $8,000 when you're talking about those other hard to measure, like hard to quantify benefits like mental health and wellbeing, completion rates, engagement, is probably worth the $8,000. Like, how do you put a price on mental health and wellbeing? It's very hard to do. And I know there's an economist somewhere who's probably trying to. I just wanted to say that training people is a good thing, irrelevant of whether or not they have a job in council. Just like what Councillor Heremiah said, if you train them up and they get a bit of experience afterwards, it goes on their resume. We know that there's a shortage of trades and skills at the moment, so anything the council can do to help address that and give our young people opportunities to be tradesmen, which, to be honest, I wish I'd been a tradesman, because I'd be a lot better off financially and I'd be employing more people and doing all sorts of good things that we want people to do in our city. So I don't necessarily agree with Councillor Wilcox that we need to have a position for them, because at the start of a 4-year apprenticeship, you don't know what's going to be there for budgets later. But I think I don't think we should use that to dissuade the benefits of training, and especially having experience in a government environment. I was just listening to the Director General for the Department of Public Works and Energy this morning, and they really want highly trained, government experienced trades to go into the energy and renewables sector. And even if this trade isn't perfect right now, I guarantee you another 4 or 5 years we'll be looking at that sort of thing, and we'll be setting people up for a successful future. So great work, good 6-month update, and can't wait to see the 12-month report.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Do we have any further questions? Councillors, there is a motion on the screen. Do I have someone? Councillor Heremiah is going to move it. Councillor Raven has second. Can I, by a show of hands, please see those in favour? That has been carried unanimously. Thank you. Does anybody have any general business for the acting People and Culture Manager today? None? Mr Watson, do you have any for us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will speak to the next agenda item as well. Thank you.
No GB?
No GB today.
Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to item 5.4, the proposed work relating violence and aggression policy. I also am inviting Miss Emily Shafto into the discussions as well. Could you please proceed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the Chair, today we present to Council's City Governance Committee a proposed work-related violence and aggression policy, seeking adoption and support. Logan City Council acknowledges its people and the community sit at the very heart of its key corporate values. While the majority of interactions between the public and council staff are positive in nature, evidence shows that violence and aggression from members of the public towards Logan City Council employees and councillors is occurring with unfortunate frequency. As a community-facing organisation in a growing city, Council should take a zero tolerance approach to instances of violence or aggression against employees, councillors and persons providing services to Council. Statistically, those in public-facing roles are more likely to experience workplace violence. As a local authority, Council has over 50% of its staff in public-facing roles, working in a variety of locations across the city. Certain roles such as compliance and enforcement, animal management, waste management, road workers and customer service roles, particularly those which deliver functions remotely or on private property, are particularly susceptible to high levels of unreasonable behaviour from the public. The purpose of this report is to seek the implementation of work-related violence and aggression policy to reduce occupational violence and aggression. The statutory agency Safe Work Australia also encourages organisations to implement policies of this nature. We're happy to take any questions on this matter.
Thank you, Mr Watson. I have Councillor Bradley, but before we start, I'd just like to say as a local councillor, we are also forward-facing to the public, and it would seem that COVID has certainly bring out some of the nastiness in us. We try to handle it as much as we possibly can, but having this policy in place will certainly help us. But I'll pass it over to Councillor Bradley now.
Thank you so much. This might sound a bit bizarre, but what happens if it's a staff member to a councillor? What do you suggest doing then?
Thank you, Councillor, through the Chair. Zero tolerance approach to any violence or aggression to any staff member or council or those who work on behalf of council, whether they be a staff member or not. That should be reported, and those staff
reported
members,
to whom, please?
To council through our complaints network. So
through the complaints network. Okay. Is there like an email address or something?
Yes. So councillors or staff can go through and report in a number of varieties through their own supervisors or coordinators. Councillors can go through the CEO in that respect.
Right. Okay, and what if the CEO doesn't act on that? Like I said, this might sound a bit bizarre.
Yeah, there would be avenues for escalation through external bodies as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bradley, has that answered your question that you wanted?
Not really, but
would you like to take it offline? Are you happy to do that, Mr. Thank you. Is there any further questions at all? Councillors, you will see on the board a motion. Could I please get someone to pass the motion? Councillor Raven has, seconded by Councillor Hall. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll go back to the general business. Does anybody have any general business for the acting people and cultural manager? There being none, do you have any for us?
Not today, thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your time. Thank you. We'll just wait for the next section to come up. Councillors, we're moving on to item 5.5, Audit and Risk Committee meeting from September 2022. Could Miss Anita White please enter the discussions today?
Thank you through the Chair, and good morning, councillors. Item 5.5 is a report in compliance with the requirements of the Local Government Act, passing through the recommendations of two recent meetings of the Audit and Risk Committee. The first meeting was on 7 September when the Audit and Risk Committee met to consider the annual financial statements. Those statements, of course, came then to Council for your consideration as part of the annual report. On 27th of September, there was an ordinary meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee. The only recommendation out of that meeting was one related to Invest Logan, and that was incorporated in the report presented by the Director at the most recent round of meetings in October. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms White. Do the councillors have any questions? We're going through these items really quite quickly. Thank you, councillors. There is a motion up on the board. Do I have a mover for this motion? Mr Mayor Powell has passed the motion. Councillor Wilcox has seconded the motion. Could I, by a show of hands, see your vote, please, councillors? Mr Mayor, are you? Yes? All in favour? Thank you very much. That has been carried. Thank you, councillors. We're moving on to 5.6, options, the Procurement and Appropriations Special Committee. Ms White, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this report is presented in response to a resolution of Council last month in October, requesting a report to outline the process for how the Procurement and Appropriations Special Committee might be dissolved. What the report does is outline the process for that. Subsequent amendments to our governance framework and calendar of meetings if Council does wish to take the decision to dissolve this committee, but also how that recommendation would be practically implemented. The ultimate recommendation of this report is that the committee is dissolved, having achieved the original objectives as outlined in an earlier report to Council, but having overseen the transition of Council to a strategic procurement model of operation, but also for the benefit of the community, a significant increase in procurement activities with local and social suppliers. I'd be happy to take any questions. I would say I've also got the corporate procurement program leader here if there was any questions for her.
Thank you, Ms White. I'd also like to say thank you to Jacob for chairing this committee, but Councillor Herrmeyer has got some questions, so I'll let him go first. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a statement. So I'm in support of this report. I think the Procurement and Appropriations Special Committee has been a successful project. In 2019 to 2020 financial year, when this council was elected, council's local spend was 18%. In the 2021 to 2022 financial year, council's local spend was above 42%, and the trend's continuing. And this report is about absorbing the functions of the Procurement Special Committee with the Governance Committee, and we'll receive a quarterly update so we can track those trends and see how much council is spending with local business. So the Procurement and Appropriations Special Committee was mission accomplished. I'd like to thank Councillor Murphy, Councillor Wilcox, Councillor Stemp, Councillor Fraser, Councillor Bannon, Councillor Bradley for volunteering their time. There were some great meetings, very interesting ones, and I'd like to do a big shout out to the corporate procurement team. Learning about procurement at council and seeing some of the reforms that have been enacted has really increased faith in our local government and has been a big success. So thank you, and I would like to move when appropriate, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Heremiah. You did a great job in bringing this to Council. Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you. I'd like to thank, as the Chair of Governance for about 18 months while this was running, I'd like to thank Councillor Heremiah for all of his work that he did do as the Chair of Procurement. But I'd also like to thank, Anita, Kay and Tanika, especially for all of their work behind the scenes that they did do into getting all of the reports and getting everything ready for each of these meetings and that sort of thing. So thank you, and I do look forward to seeing the quarterly reports, which I requested quite a while ago. So I'm looking forward to all of those reports that are going to be coming through with all of the data being shared to all of the councillors and everything like that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Councillor Heremiah has moved the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bradley has seconded that. I will now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Councillors, will now move on to item 5.7, Councillor Expenses and Entitlement Policy Review, November 2022. Ms White, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Councillor Expenses Policy is one familiar to all of you, being a requirement of Section 250 of the Local Government Act. Councillors, we've worked with you over the last couple of months to review this policy. The policy is now presented to you for your consideration, having taken into account the feedback that we've received along the way as to improvements that could be made. I thank you for your commitment to reviewing this policy, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms White. I do understand that Councillor Raven has been corresponding with yourself over the last few days, and there has been some minor modifications to that policy as well. Councillor Raven, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam
you.
Chair. Through you, thank you for your help on working through the questions I had. Anita, your responses were timely and very, very helpful. I've got amended recommendations that I circulated to councillors last night, and I'm happy just to test if councillors are generally supportive of those changes. In summary, they are reasonably minor, allowing council advisors to be involved in the coordination of meetings with employees rather than just the admin support team, and allowing councillor officers to be a standard meeting room to be used for those meetings without having to consult the branch manager, and also just clarifying that when councillors have corporate stationery, they can include their name and title as well as an image, division number and contact details on that stationery. They're pretty straightforward amendments to just clarify a few things to make sure that the business as usual activities of councillors that are pretty common sense continue. I'm sure that they wouldn't specifically, without them, the policy still works, but this just gives us some extra level of protection.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Those changes have been worked through with Ms White and Robert. There's a new motion up on the board. Councillors, you would have received a copy of this from Councillor Raven. Is there any questions with regards to that? Councillor Bradley.
Thank you. Through the Chair, I don't have any questions in relation to what Councillor Raven has put forward, but I will say I wasn't at the briefing, and I've expressed previously that I don't believe briefings should be used as a forum for decision making or possible changes. But anyway, I'll just won't go on into that. But the bit that I do object to that has been put forward is the social media boosting. I won't be supporting this today because of that. I personally believe that should be the role of the councillor to be paying for that boosting, not for the organisation, not for ratepayers of our city. So I will be voting on that against this today if it gets up, purely for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. I just wanted to clarify with regards to briefing sessions, they're not used as a decision-making Briefing sessions are to bring to councillors just information with regards to reports that are coming ahead. Councillor Fraser, did you want to talk? Yeah.
I just want to clarify, what does stationary actually mean? What items exactly are we talking about? And that can be answered by the Councillor Raven or the manager.
Thank you, and through the chair, the stationery is ordinarily your letterhead with compliment slips, your business cards, and then item 2.5 of attachment 1 also then talks about the electronic type of stationery, which is your letterhead and email footers. So, and I think extends to your Christmas card.
Councillor Fraser, has that answered your question?
So all the ones that you just mentioned do have the council logo, don't they? Our face in that. So why are we why does it say that it will not contain certain things? So what's this generic stationery bundle that is referred to in item 2.5?
So there is a generic bundle where it's just Logan City Council. It's not branded for councillor, like a specific councillor, and you do have that bundle. So that might be just a with compliment slip that doesn't have your name on it. And if that's the case, we can provide it to you. I don't think it's a widely used thing, but it is an availability.
Councillor Fraser, has that answered your question?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, did you want to ask any questions? No. Thank you. Okay. Councillor Wilcox.
Thanks. The only thing I'm still concerned about is how are we still addressing printing and postage? I've been sitting here adding up last financial years for a few different divisions and that sort of thing, and I'm still perplexed about how different and varying it is between each of us. So, for example, last financial year I printed 6,524 letters to get sent. My postage, because I couldn't outsource, was 5,206 to get all of those letters out, obviously in bulk, you know, and some councils were able to print, you know, 10,000 letters, and the outsourcing of that was, you know, under $1,000 to get those sent, and some were over 20,000, and it was 4,000 to get it outsourced. So there's huge variances between each and every one of us. That's my only concern is I still can't send, and this is letters about roads, huge road upgrades and stuff like this, and I still can't get my info out to Division 11 because it's 320 square k's, it's acreage, it has to be Australia Post, because we literally can't find anyone to outsource postage to and stuff like that. So that's my one huge concern still.
Councillor Wilcox, I think you answered your own question. Each division is unique, and I know I can get out 10,000 letters for under $1,000, but yeah, it's really a budget question. But Ms. White, do you want to enter the discussion?
A real issue, I think, and each division has a few of its own challenges. So I think there's two ways that you could potentially look at this. One option is that there is an amendment proposed in this policy whereby if you're able to obtain the support of the branch manager and they have sufficient budget to support those comms around, say, a roads project, then that can be utilised. But separately, it really becomes down to a budget discussion. We have a budget this year, and so it may be that you would like to look at that, similarly to what we did with the motor vehicle allowances at one point, to look at something proportionate. And we're happy to work with you as to what might be the options for how that's developed leading into the budget discussions.
Councillor Wilcox, do you want to take that offline, or do you want to enter any further discussions? No? Are you fine? Okay. Yes, Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Councillor Wilcox, one of the questions I asked that didn't make it to an amendment because it wasn't relevant to this policy was along the lines of what Anita's just spoken about, where I asked, can we, if we have a LIP project and the branch manager is supportive, can we send letters out of that LIP budget in order to contact community? Because I agree with you, there are so many projects where you have to do direct mail because you need feedback from individual properties. You can't just letterbox it and hope for the best.
But I can't letterbox it. That's my thing. I can't drop it in a letterbox. It has to go Australia Post because I can't outsource.
Do I have the floor? Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
So when I'm doing consultation on speed bumps, for instance, I can't letterbox that because I need to know that it's gone to the right property and that property is the one providing me feedback. The same thing can apply to you with any number of your projects that you're doing. But essentially the feedback was you have to take that up with the branch manager because that's what the policy says. But I think that's something I've explored before with Robert, that LIP projects should have a comms budget with them. Because if you do a lot of big LIP projects that need a lot of consultation, you should be able to send letters out to the people who are impacted by that. And for your area, that's all you can do to communicate with people. And I think that that sort of method sort of addresses part of your concern, but not all of it. I've got another comment back to the social media stuff, but Councillor Wilcox looks like she wants to respond.
I'll let Councillor Wilcox come, then I'll come back to you, and then if Councillor Bradley wants to reply. Councillor Wilcox.
Thanks. And I do send LIP budget updates or LIP project updates, but they're like 200-300 houses, if that, if you're lucky. And it's like such a small area around that park. I can't send it to thousands. It is to 200 homes directly that I know will use that park. But I would like it on the record that the current arrangements, I can't even send a letter once per year to all of my residents. And that's why my consultation letters are so narrow, because I literally, I spend, if I print 200 letters, it's going to cost me $200 to send it. If I print 1,000, it's $1,000 to send it. I literally can't outsource it. That's my issue. That's where it's not equitable for all of us here. As I said, you know, I've got 15,000 homes that I need to send it to. I wouldn't be able to send it to 15,000 homes, yet other councillors can send 25,000 letters per year to their residents, and I can't send one to each and every one.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. I believe we're all in the same boat. None of us can all send, under the current budget, a letter to every resident in our division via Australia Post. It's just fortunate that some areas do have that other services. Unfortunately, you don't have. Back to Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to reassure Councillor Bradley that the councillor pays for any social media boosting and then tests it on the policy as to whether or not it was a council event that you're promoting. So, for instance, if you're promoting LEAF as a great example, that is a citywide council event that we get good traction on council's page, but we would get better traction on your page because it directly speaks to your community in your part of the city, or in my page it directly speaks to my community in my part of the city, and I think that gets us better engagement at events. But what I couldn't do is, well, I could spend money on boosting me saying John Raven's a great bloke, but Anita will not approve that reimbursement and I will end up paying for it. So boosting for personal gain can't be done under this policy. Just wanted to make that very clear.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Councillor Bradley, did you want to speak?
Yeah, any social media is personal gain, I'm sorry.
Mayor Power.
A couple of things. In relation to the travel, if a third party is paying for the corporate travel and accommodation, will that still need to be approved?
Anita, can you answer that question?
You're only referring to council funding?
So I might have to just consider that a bit further, Councillor, because it's not a normal. When a third party that might pay for it might be as part of our LGA membership, for instance, that the councillor costs are captured there. If there's specific examples you could give me, I could give more consideration to it.
I'm referring to the council mayors. So I'm looking at paying for my own airfare. So, but you would have to approve the part where they're the transfer ships and accommodation that they're paying for.
Through the chair, my view on the floor right now is that would be appropriate to report to council if it's an international travel. If there's, and that it would be transparent then to report that you are going overseas for this council-related purpose, but that some of the funds are being paid for by a third party, but that some costs may in fact be met by the organisation.
So it's not coming under the council umbrella out of their budget, that's all. It's just a question. It's not a direction or anything. I'm just asking the question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Robert Stratton would like to enter the discussion.
Just to add a point to that, so under that scenario, councillors would also need to consider whether there was any requirement to update the register of interest in relation to third parties paying for flights or expenses, and also consider any possible conflicts of interest down the path, depending on what comes in front of you in terms of committee.
I wish I could have a conflict of interest with the council of mayors and I wouldn't have to go to meetings anymore, but I'm only joking. Also, in regards to, I think I've expressed my views on the expenses page, on page 159 at the workshop, so I'll be voting against it as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, any further questions? You will see a motion up on the screen. Can I ask for a mover of this motion on the screen, please? Anybody? Any takers? Councillor Raven, thank you. Has moved the motion. Do I have a seconder? Can I move it? As the chair? Councillor Russell has moved the has the seconder. Do any councillors wish to speak to the motion? I will now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Okay, so we have Councillor Russell, Councillor Raven, Councillor Heremiah, Councillor Stamp, Councillor Wilcox and myself. Is that enough? Just please, just keep your hands up, please. That has passed. Thank you. So just those that are against, so I just can note it. So Mayor Power, Councillor Bradley.
Strongly against.
Councillor Kransky.
I'm abstaining, thank you.
Abstain. Councillor Hall.
Just lightly against.
Slightly against. Councillor Fraser.
Yeah, against.
And that is all. I think we've got everybody. Are we still correct? Thank you. That motion has been carried. Thank you very much, ladies. Does anybody have any general business for the acting corporate governance manager today? None? Anita, do you have any for us?
For once, Councillor, I do. Some good news. I wanted to let councillors know that on 1 November this year, our delegations went live across the organisation. I think it is a really strong example of councillors and the organisation working together. Councillors will recall passing the governance framework and then the very lengthy report in June whereby you delegated a vast majority of our statutory powers to the CEO. The organisation has then worked really well together to then devolve those powers further down to appropriately qualified officers, and we've gone live with a technology solution that makes delegations really readily available to all of our staff who hold those powers. So thank you for your strategic oversight and what has really been a really great move forward in terms of our governance maturity.
Thank you, Ms. White. Thank you. Have a great day today. Thank you. You have that shirt is very bougie. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item, 5.8, and councillors, we're halfway through, so here we go, downhill run. So I will refer to 5.8, the financial performance review for September 2022. Ms. Bugg, could you enter the discussions, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. Item 5.8 is financial performance report for period ending 30 September 2022. This is a quarterly report. I'd first like to speak to the risks. In addition to those that have identified in the report, we have an emerging risk. Well, it's not so much emerging, but it's becoming, we can calculate it. It's the continued inflation pressures, interest rate increases and the impacts on economic activity and pricing, particularly the rise and fall around consideration of contracts. So there are a couple of examples in this area that are becoming apparent to council at the moment. One of those is the cost of electricity, the contract prices in the recently negotiated electricity contract, increase of some $2 million for a 12-month period. and also the waste management contract, where we are starting to calculate some of the increases in that particular contract, and we could see a double figure percentage increase, but that will be effective for next financial year start. On to the report, noting the key elements of this report. The operating surplus at the end of September was $12 million, which is above budget year to date by some $10.9 million. The variance is fairly evenly split between both revenue and expenditure. The operating revenue was over year to date budget by $4.7 million, which is a 3% variance to the budget. The main variances, or the drivers of that variance, are Logan Water tax and dividend, but also new services revenue in Logan Water. Interest, as I've noted previously, is also significantly above budget year to date. I'll note that the general rates revenue is slightly behind budget. The growth in rateable properties, which is noted on the financial snapshot page of your report. For the quarter ending September, we had an additional 529 rateable properties. For the quarter, we have approximately 2,500 properties per annum as a growth figure built into our budget, so slightly behind there. Also noting the financial assistance grants monies, we are behind this year in budget, but that was flagged at the end of last financial year when we received a greater percentage than we expected and earlier for the year. So that's having a negative impact on our revenue for this financial year. That'll be adjusted in the first budget amendment. Operating costs are under year-to-date budget by $6.2 million, which is a 4% variance to budget. The main drivers continue to be employee-related costs. There's also a timing issue in the budget around the major IT projects. That timing issue will be adjusted in the first budget amendment as well. This report contains LIP reporting for the quarter. I also did send out individually the reports for divisions this morning, which gives you greater detail in what projects in this report and where their status is at the end of September. Investments, obviously reflecting the higher interest rates there, and rates and charges are still slightly trending downward at the end of September, being as it has been over the last number of quarters. However, there is expectation, given the economic pressures being felt by households, this area is likely to push back up. So we'll keep an eye on that, as we always do, and of course we have our financial hardship policy, which will help households who contact us in that regard. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Bugg. I have Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, through the chair. Just two things. I forwarded to you an email from a constituent about the credit charge that is an ongoing, a fee that is passed on to council from the banks. Yeah, so I just, if there's some way of putting out there, if it's through the media or something like that, other options that people have so they don't get, charged that credit charge. The other thing I was going to ask you, and thank you so much for that breakdown of where divisional LIP funding has gone. Is it possible to get like what hasn't been expended this financial year? Because I don't know, I couldn't work that out.
To your first point, Councillor, happy to follow up how we can provide clear information for the community as to how to avoid the credit card charge. I'll take that one with me, and absolutely we can provide you with what's unallocated.
Thank you.
In the divisional LIP.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Councillor Bradley, that's answered your questions. Thank you very much. Councillors, do I have any other questions? There being none, there is a motion up on the board. Could I get a mover for that motion, please? Councillor Bradley has moved that motion. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Raven has seconded it. By a show of hands, could I see who is in favour? Please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on to 5.9, which is the write-off of infrastructure charges for debitor 01104. I note that this is a confidential report, and it is necessary to take this discussion of this report into a closed session. This matter relates to a Local Government Regulation 2012 Queensland, Section 254J3, negotiations with regards to a commercial matter involving the local government for which a public discussion would be likely to prejudice the interest of the local government. Councillors, before we move into closed sessions, and the intention overview is different to those on the screen, I remind councillors, if there's no desire to take this matter into a confidential session, we don't need to. I now open the floor to the councillors. Does anybody wish to take it into a confidential session? There being none, I pass it back to you, Ms. Bugg, reminding you that we are not in a confidential session. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Talking to this report, we're seeking the approval write-off $28,354, which is for infrastructure charges. These charges do stem from a development which was a staged development for strata titles. I think the key to understanding this report is, or the request to write off the debt, is to understand how council became an unsecured debt in this situation. So the process for development in this instance was to provide a survey plan, develop the first unit, sell the first unit to fund the development of the second unit. Through the normal course of the process, the infrastructure charges are raised on the land at this commencement of the development. So it was on one parcel of land. There were then changes in the land parcels from one lot to two through the development, and therefore the original charge did not have land that it could be attached to. So therefore we then became an unsecured debtor when the organisation went into liquidation. The organisation has now been deregistered, and given that we have an unsecured debt, there is no possibility of us getting those funds to cover that debt from the non-existent company anymore. Hence the reason the report's in front of you today, to write that debt off.
Thank you, Ms. Bugg. Councillors, have we got any questions with regards to this report? Councillor Stamp.
Madam Chair, through you, it's just more of a general question. Was there sort of an unusual set of circumstances for this to occur, or is there anything we can do in the future to prevent this sort of thing happening again?
Thank you, Councillor. It was unusual, particularly in that the organisation went into liquidation and the process of development continued to its end when the liquidator was appointed to get the best outcome. However, unfortunately, our debt was no longer secured.
Thank you, Ms. Bugg. Is there any further questions? Councillors, we're just doing some clarification with regards to the motion. We're all good to go? Okay, councillors, there is a motion up on the board with regards to this report. Do I have a mover for this motion? Councillor Raven has moved it. Councillor Stamp has seconded. By way of hands, could I see all those in favour please raise your hand? That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Just give us a moment and then we'll move on to the next item. The next agenda item is 5.10, a rate exemption and concession application for Springwood and Rochdale South. This is a confidential report. I note that this item is a confidential and is considered necessary to take the discussion of this report into closed session. This matter relates to Local Government Regulation 2012 Queensland, Section 254J3, being rating concessions. Do any councillors wish to move us into closed session of this item? Councillor Bradley has moved that we will move into closed session. Councillor Karansky has seconded that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. We've now moved in closed session. Can I please make sure that the recording has been switched on and the audio recording? streaming must commence. Are we all good down the back there? Thank you very much. Councillors, there should be a motion coming up onto the board very shortly. Thank you, ladies. Councillor, is there a mover for the motion on the board? Councillor Bradley has moved the motion on the board. Is there a seconder? Councillor Stamp has seconded. Councillors, does anybody want to speak to the motion? No. I will now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Hall, I can't see your hand, no? Okay, so I'm just going to go around the room. Mayor Powell, Councillor Bradley, Councillor Russell, Councillor Kransky, Councillor Raven, Councillor Fraser, Councillor Stamp, Councillor Wilcox and myself have all voted in the favour, so that motion has been carried. Councillor Hall, how do you vote?
Abstain.
And Councillor Councillor Harrimeyer, how do you vote?
Against.
Thank you. We'll just give the minute clerks just a minute to catch up. Thank you. That brings us to the end of those reports. Does anybody have any general business for the Finance Manager? Ms. Bugg, do you have any for us? Thank you for your time today. Councillors, we're moving on to the last report of the day, 5.11. Mr. Eddie Dedman, you're up. Thank you. Councillors, I note that item 5.11 is a confidential report and is necessary to take the discussions into a closed manner, and that is for the purpose of acquisition of land in Jimboomba. This matter relates to Local Government Regulation 2012 Queensland, Section 254J3, and that is the negotiating with relating to a commercial matter involving local government for which a public discussion would be likely to be prejudiced in the interest of local government. Do any councillors wish to move into a closed session? Councillor Wilcox has passed that motion. Do we have a seconder at all? Councillor Raven has taken us into second. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That has been carried. Thank you very much. Can I please have the live streaming turned off? Can you give us a wave? Excellent, and the audio recording is off. Councillors, there is a motion up on the screen. I believe Councillor Kransky has nominated to move the motion. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Power has seconded the motion. Councillors, does anybody wish to speak to the motion? No? I will now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Councillors, that has come to the end of the reports. Does anybody have any general business for the Acting Administration Manager? None? Mr Denman, do you have any for us?
Through the chair, no.
Thank you very much for your time today. I believe that we don't have any late reports on the agenda today. That concludes today's agenda. Does anyone have any general business for the Director of Organisational Services? Oh, you're getting off lightly, Robert. Do you have any for us? No, thank you. I now declare that the City Governance Committee meeting of the 16th of November 2022 be concluded at 11:52. Thank you very much, councillors. It was a lot of work today. Thank you.